Welcome into Los Angeles, California, and Reiter's Block. I'm your host, Bill Reiter. We got a cool show for you. Daniel Negreanu, the poker star, is going to join us in the lead up to the main event at the World Series of Poker. We'll give you some data on one of the most underappreciated teams in this year's free agency in the NBA, and we're going to project 3 years from now the best teams in the association based on the things we know. All of that and a few things more starting right now. All right, yesterday we gave you our Writer's Block top 10 teams in the NBA this upcoming season based on the recalibration, the restructuring of the NBA, and with this crazy free agency, we're going to do something a little different today, a little prognostication for you. The best teams in the NBA 3 years from now as best we can understand them. We'll start in our ranking with an honorable mention, the Sacramento Kings. And when you look at key players of the Kings, I know, I feel like maybe I'm selling them short. I don't see a future MVP on that team, but I do see a whole lot of depth and a lot of youth with that depth. De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, they just gave that money to. I guess Marvin Bagley III could grow into a star. Some of those guys, as you can see, are going to be, including Bogdanovic, is a guy that they're going to have to re-sign. There's some people they'll have to re-sign when we do this list. So Kings, you're just off the list, and you got bumped by, for us, we're going to count down the number 10 team in 3 years in the NBA in 2022. Congratulations, Indiana Pacers. If you're going to win in a market like Indianapolis, you have to build slowly, you have to build through the draft, and you have to build through trades and the ability to bring guys in free agency that are undervalued. I said this earlier on CBS Sports HQ. I think Malcolm Brogdon is the biggest under-the-radar signing. I don't worry about the money. 50, 40, 90 guy. Victor Oladipo, when he's back, they're going to be absolute studs. Domantas Sabonis carried that team for a stretch until the wheels came off. This is a group that played great basketball last year before Oladipo went down. They were the 3rd seed. They are young, they are interesting, and Oladipo is going to be a superstar. Give me the Pacers at 10, and give me everything they can be as they grow together as a group and as a team. I love the additions that they made. I love the things that they brought into that team. They're going to be really, really special. I like Jeremy Lamb too, just the depth and the ability to have some players on that squad that can grow together. At number 9 is the Brooklyn Nets. Their window is basically not this year and not 3 years from now. It's that time in between because Kevin Durant's going to be a 34-year-old. Kyrie Irving's going to be presumably the best player on the team. DeAndre Jordan's going to be reaching that point where he's not going to be the impact player to whatever extent he is today. And yet I like the lineup. I like what they've done. And maybe KD will defy expectations and be great. It's hard to handicap. So we got the Nets at number 9. Now for me, as we move up these rankings, having 1-2 punches, young guys that grow into potential number 1, number 2 superstar tandems is critical. And the Celtics are at 8 in part because I have utter confidence that Jason Tatum's going to be that guy. I'm not sure about Jaylen Brown, but remember when Kyrie was hurt, before Kyrie arrived a couple years ago, before that trade, this was a team that had those 2 young guys looking like they could be the core to greatness down the line. Kemba Walker is going to be 31 years old. I still think Brad Stevens is one of the best coaches in the NBA. You can see the group there. Gordon Hayward is such an interesting part of this equation. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2021 before our imaginary 2022 rankings. Presumably, if he's the guy he used to be, he would agree to come back to the Celtics because he and Stevens have some history. At number 6 is the Lakers, and I don't know what to tell you about the Lakers. If they have Kawhi Leonard, will change everything. Anthony Davis is going to be a top 3 player in the game 3 years from now, maybe a top 4 player in the game. Could be the best player in the game, though I've got some other guys that I would pencil into that spot. It's hard to really understand and do the Nostradamus thing on what LeBron James is going to be as a 37-year-old. Maybe Kawhi is part of the team. I love where Kuzma's going. But you're going to see there are some teams with so much young depth and so much young talent. The Lakers has currently constructed, minus Kawhi, fall only that 7th spot. I will say this. Anthony Davis, when he was still a Pelican, I guess he's still technically a Pelican, but when we didn't know he was going to be a Laker, talked about this being, this moment here, in the years ahead, his window to actually win NBA championships.
I always talked about just winning. And for me, I just feel like it's my time. Like I said, you don't know how long you're gonna play this game. And I feel like I'm in my prime right now. I'm playing at an elite level, and I think that I want to make sure that I take advantage of that.
I see AD, and I just want to get in there with a razor and just a little separation, big guy. I know he's the brow, but anyway, drives me crazy. Yesterday we had 4 teams that I think this upcoming season are the big dogs in the NBA. In 3 years, there are going to be 6 of them. We start with number 6, the Sixers. Looks like Ben Simmons is going to be, as we expected and told you here on the show, a Sixer for a very long time. The Simmons-Embiid combo alone for me is enough for these guys to be potential NBA championship contenders in the years ahead as they reach their prime. There's always the asterisk. I know Embiid's got to be healthy. I get it. I understand it. I believe Simmons is going to develop a jump shot. Tobias Harris on the team through 2024. Horford will be on that team in 2023. I actually like Josh Richardson, who's an unrestricted free agent in 2022. You're looking at, I think, a really interesting team even in the years ahead as guys like Horford get a little bit older. I love this young core. I love Simmons and Embiid together, and I'm telling you, there's going to be, especially in the long term, maybe not as much this upcoming season, addition by subtraction and moving on from Jimmy Butler. That locker room was not a special place, was not a happy place. It will be now that he's gone. At number 5 is a team I may be sleeping on. Certainly P.A. David on the show thinks I am. He happens to be a Nuggets fan. I love Denver. I love what they're about, and I'm a big Jamal Murray guy, but I don't think he's going to be the dominant level number 2 on a team the way that some other players ahead of them on the list are going to be, and I love that he just got paid. Good for him. We know Nikola Jokic is an MVP level guy. Michael Porter Jr. is, for me, the big wild card here, more than Bol Bol, who I think is a steal where they got him. Michael Porter Jr. could have been a top 3 pick in the NBA draft last summer, could have been number 1 overall if he hadn't gotten injured. We're going to see him pretty soon in Summer League. If he looks like a top 2 or 3 or top pick in the draft, the guy we thought he was going to be when he first committed to Missouri, then this is a Denver team that's probably higher than I'm putting them. I love the Murray-Jokic combo. I just don't think it's as impressive as some other teams, including the Atlanta Hawks. Some of this, too, I got to say this with Atlanta, and probably should give Denver the same credit. I love their GM, and their ability to build around the stars we already know they're going to have is critical. Travis Schlenk has been so impressive in his couple seasons running this organization. Trae Young is an MVP candidate down the line. I love Cam Reddish as a steal. I know some disagreement with the guys here on HQ. I think he's going to be great. DeAndre Hunter's the perfect fit. They're going to build a culture. They're going to stretch the floor. They've got rim protectors. Kevin Huerter's a guy that's going to be really, really impressive. I'm a big fan of what Atlanta's building 3 years from now. And I also think part of this is because Schlenk's going to continue to add guys, bring in fresh blood, make impressive moves, add big-time free agents when he needs to. I love Atlanta. I almost put Atlanta 3, but man, the Pelicans are really good. I know that the jury's out on Zion. He's the star of the moment, but so was Karl Anthony Towns at a certain point and DeAndre Ayton at a certain point. Neither of those guys have experienced postseason success, and yet Zion is surrounded by so much young talent. And David Griffin, again, a GM doing a really, really impressive job, has surrounded him with so many guys. I love the Jackson Hayes decision this year in the draft. I love the Alexander Walker decision. I think Brandon Ingram is going to be potentially a multi-time All-Star. Drew Holiday's still a part of that team, unrestricted agent in 2022, but you look at what that team can grow into. I love everything New Orleans is doing. And again, like Atlanta, this is a GM who's bold, able to make moves. This is just the foundation of a team. There will be more pieces in place in the years ahead. They've got some nice assets. And Griffin talked about this. David Griffin talked about this when he took this job. They were going to build this thing to win big-time championships.
I think the way we're structured gives us the best opportunity to take advantage of both Zion's gifts, but the rest of the fit of the team working so well with the pace that Alvin and his coaches want to play at, and in particular, the style they want to play at.
All right, my second best team 3 years from now requires some things to go the right way, including Chris Middleton to be the player that's the near-max guy that the Bucks committed to. But I still think you can't sleep on Giannis. I understand that Giannis Antetokounmpo has to stay for this to work, but I believe Milwaukee has put enough around him that this is the place he's going to remain and the place he's going to want to be. I love what they've got in Middleton. I love what they've got in a GM that's willing to go for it now. The team's going to change drastically between now and 2022. Middleton's going to be there. I think Giannis will re-sign. But a lot of these guys, especially some of the veterans you see on the roster, aren't going to be around. Lopez will be there toward the end of his career. They're going to have some other stars in place. But I think Giannis is the best player in the NBA now. I think that's not true. I think outside of LeBron, he's maybe the best player in the NBA. He will be the moment LeBron gives up that spot. He certainly will be in 3 years. if you have the best player in the NBA, you literally have the reigning MVP today, and he's so young. He's getting better, started to hit those or at least take those three-point shots. If he's hitting even a third of those shots in 3 years, Giannis becomes even more unguardable than he is now. They're number 2, which brings us to number 1. Congratulations, Dallas Mavericks. I get it. Again, it's 3 years from now. Things have to go the right way. Kristaps Porzingis has to be healthy. But, man, Luka Doncic is going to be a multi-time MVP in this game. And he and Kristaps Porzingis 3 years from now should be the best duo in basketball. I love everything that they're doing there. And this is a Dallas team that has the money and will have the room in a year or 2 or 3 to go out there and add a max guy to supplement these guys, these dudes, Porzingis and Luka. This is the duo that will be part of a big 3. We just don't know what it looks like yet. Several years from now, Luka Doncic might be, if it's not Giannis, the best player in the NBA. He'll certainly be in that conversation. He'll be an MVP within 4 years. He'll be in his prime. I love what the Mavericks are looking like. So here's my list, top 10 teams 3 years from now. Somebody screen grab this and make fun of me on Twitter in 3 years. I won't be able to deny that I said all of these things. I love the Mavs, love the Bucks, love the Pelicans, love the Hawks, I love the Nuggets, love the Sixers, and I think there's a drop-off. But again, maybe LeBron really is ageless. Maybe Jason Tatum becomes one of the best players in the game and Danny Ainge pulls off a crazy move. Maybe Kevin Durant looks like the second best player on earth, maybe the best scorer of all time, till he's 37 or 38, and maybe the Pacers and that interesting core grows into an even more dangerous team than I think. Maybe the Kings make us all look foolish. You know who makes people look foolish at the poker table? Daniel Negreanu, one of the great poker players of all time. I like poker. I play a lot. Very, very much an amateur. Gonna try not to geek out in the interview. Daniel Negreanu gonna join me just before, it's tomorrow, the World Series of Poker main event begins. We'll do that poker conversation when we come back to the program here in just a minute. All right, welcome back into the program. It's Reiter's Block from Los Angeles, California. As a avid amateur poker player whose career highlight is probably losing a bunch of money to Phil Lock in a home game here in LA, I am beyond thrilled to be joined by one of the greatest poker players in the history of the game, Daniel Negreanu, Kid Poker, 6-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner. I can't even keep track of how many World Series of Poker final tables he's made. I think it's 36. Mr. Negreanu, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, and I think it's more, but I don't know either. Than 36.
I thought it might be. Is it more? Yeah, it's, you keep doing them, and it's hard. You know, it's hard to keep up with. How's main event basically is here. We've obviously had World Series of Poker going on for a long time now this summer. How have you been playing? How you feel about where you're at, getting ready for the main event?
Well, so far it's been a pretty good summer for me. There's a Player of the Year ranking every year at the World Series, and I think I'm in about 10th place right now, which puts me in the running. I've made 3 final tables, but really looking forward to this main event because it could be and likely will be record-breaking. The numbers across the board at the World Series this year are up, and I think that trend will continue in the main event.
Daniel, how much of correlation is there for you, how well you play up to the main event at the World Series with how well you actually perform at the main event?
Well, surprisingly, none whatsoever. There have been World Series where, I've had really great runs and then, did nothing in the main event and vice versa. So really what matters is like how much energy I have, how lucky I get, because for as much as, there are professional poker players in this game, luck does play a role. And there's a lot of minefields when you're dealing with upwards of, 8,000 to 9,000 people, which we expect to play for this main event.
So as a casual poker player, I consume a lot of poker media. We've got a lot of the World Series events on CBS All Access, and somewhere in the last few days, I saw a commercial for your master's class, and you made the point in this advertisement that the moment you feel like you've achieved poker zen, you know what you're doing, is when everybody passes you. In that respect, how much more difficult is the game today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Well, the game of poker, the way it looked when I started playing in the late 90s is very different to what you see today. The advance of AI and artificial intelligence and different software programs you can use to sort of figure out stuff that in the past, old school gamblers kind of just, figured out by trial and error. Now there's actual evidence of like, in this situation, this is what you should do. And that never was around before. And a lot of the top players at the very highest level use that to improve their game. So the game will always continue to evolve and improve in terms of like the quality of players. But if you don't study as well, you're very likely to be surpassed by the young up and comers.
You're a household poker name for poker fans. There were some guys that were household poker names along with you 5 or 10 years ago who aren't. What have you done? What have you been able to do to maintain your edge, maintain this level of excellence in this sport that keeps evolving?
Well, it requires several things. It requires some self-awareness and some humility and some willingness to say, okay, so I've been a pro for 20 years, but these young kids are learning things that I don't know. So let me learn something from them instead of just taking that position as though, I've mastered it all and there's nothing left to be learned. So always being willing to, sort of check in with myself every 6 months or so and go, okay, am I better than this crew? And if not, what can I do to improve? And I just love the game. I love the World Series of Poker above all else. And for me, it's important to, compete at the highest levels because it's what I love to do.
All right, in my amateur world, my brother had his first few cashes in the World Series of Poker this year. He's playing his second main event, and his game has really changed since he went to GTO, game theory optimization, memorizing certain situations and scenarios and what he's going to do. Is that something you've implemented, or is that more something you're aware of that you want to counteract for those players that are utilizing that?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, like GTO stands for Game Theory Optimal, right? And what that does is it's a baseline. For example, let's say you're playing against the perfect computer, okay? Well, there is one play that is optimal against this player, against this computer. So now what I do when I've incorporated this by working with some coaches is I'll try to figure out what is the game theory optimal play. Now I'm going to adjust, right? So I'm going to say if the game theory play says I should be bluffing 80% of the time here. Now I'm going to ask myself, well, who am I playing against? I'm playing against you. Well, you never fold. I know that. So I'm going to deviate from that, and I'm going to try to exploit by maybe only bluffing 20% or maybe bluffing 0%. So it's important as a baseline to learn game theory in today's game, but then you always want to adjust what you're going to do based on the opponent you're playing because not everybody is a robot. Well, none of us are.
The main event. I mean, it's the dream for all of us. You obviously play every single year, and there is so much play. It's one of the reasons so attractive to amateurs. You are going to get a lot of play. There's a billion big blinds. For you, a field that big, the variance of skill that large, do you try to take the first day and just float? Do you look to build chips early? What's your general philosophy given how big the field is year after year?
Okay, so the best way I would describe it is if you were a boxer, like the Floyd Mayweather style where or where you keep your guard up and throw lots of jabs. So I'm looking to build chips, but I'm doing so in a small ball way where I'm taking few big risks. I'm taking a lot of little ones and looking to build that way, but really keeping my guard up. And of course, the goal on day one, the primary goal is survival. The secondary goal is chip accumulation.
All right, so I've always wanted to ask you this because having played a lot of cards myself, I've seen people lose their temper over very small moments. I've lost my temper over very small moments. You tend to be pretty kind and social even when things go badly in pretty large moments. Is that just because you love the game, or is that part of the philosophy of this is how I want to approach every single moment as a poker player? Because that's got to take some zen-like calm to be smiling when you get too outed for millions of dollars or in an event where your legacy is going to be shaped one way or the other.
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's not easy for anyone really when the moment is, it's a big one. Like just a few years ago in 2015, I was down to 11 players and I lost on the river and I literally fell to the floor in shock. So there's actually a famous picture of that where I just literally fell to the floor. But overall, my focus when I'm playing tournaments is to focus on the decisions that I made. And if I feel like I made good decisions, well, there's nothing left to be upset about. Luck's going to happen. The times where I beat myself up the most would be when I know it was me. It wasn't the cards. It was something that I did that took me out of the event. And, I'll typically like stew over that for 30 minutes to an hour after and go over it in my head. But after that, you got to let it go. You just got to let it go.
I'm not talking about skill here, the question I'm about to ask you, Daniel, but the main event has so many people and so many landmines. Are you aware, do you allow yourself to be aware that it's entirely plausible, if not likely, you will never win that main event, even if you play the best poker you possibly could? Or do you convince yourself, or do you believe that someday, that event, you're going to be standing there as the last guy or person standing?
Yeah, well, my answer to that has changed a great deal from when I started playing the World Series main event, because back then there was 200 players, maybe 500, it started to peak a little bit. So at that point, I'm like, I'm certain, and I was much better than the average player in the field, that I was going to win the main event. Today, well, I mean, it's obviously likely that I don't, because you're looking at 8,000 plus player fields. And again, there's a little bit of luck involved. And there's also just so many great players across the world today that it's not like, an athlete who plays in the NBA and, is a great athlete and or hockey and doesn't win, a Stanley Cup or an NBA championship. It's way more difficult to put your name in the history books as a World Series of Poker main event champion.
As evidenced by, if you're talking about being able to control your destiny as the best player in a professional sport where the margins are different, Kawhi Leonard just led your Toronto Raptors, you're from there, to an NBA championship. What does a professional poker player with roots in Toronto and Canada, what does it look like when he's celebrating his first ever NBA championship victory as a fan?
Well, this year it was me being at the World Series of Poker. So I was, I didn't really have any chance to go out and get crazy because I'm trying to keep my focus, which means no alcohol. But it was surreal, really, to see a team that, won without having a single lottery pick. I don't know that that's happened ever in the modern era where you've seen an NBA champion without a lottery pick. And it was, obviously a great team effort. People can point to the fact that Golden State was a little banged up, but hey, such is life. Golden State also benefited from that a few years ago. So I was super happy for the people in Toronto. They've dealt with a lot of heartache with the Maple Leafs for many years. So it was nice for them to actually have a victory celebration.
Daniel Negreanu, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Good luck in the main event. Hopefully we'll be talking about your victory in a few weeks, and really appreciate the time.
All right, thanks. We'll see you at the World Series next year.
Daniel Negreanu on the show. Some people want to be Michael Jordan. I just want to be Daniel Negreanu. But I think both those ships have sailed. We're going to go inside the numbers on an NBA team grossly underrated for the moves it made in this offseason. Congratulations, Pacers. That's you. It's coming up here on Writer's Block in just a minute. All right, welcome back into the show. We're going right inside the numbers on the Indiana Pacers. I think they had a sneaky good free agency. We start with 17 and 19. Prior to Victor Oladipo's season-ending injury, the Pacers, were 31 and 15. Not the Pelicans, the Pacers. They were 31 and 15 and sitting in third place in the East. After he went down, the team struggled to the finish, closing out the season 17 and 19 and dropping down to fifth in the conference standings. How about 19, 6, and 5? Before getting injured, Oladipo was a force for the Pacers, averaging just under 19 points per game to go with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. Next up is the number 9. I love this addition. Recently acquired guard Malcolm Brogdon certainly has plenty to offer. Last season, he became only the 9th player in the history of the game to join that 50-40-90 club I'm always harping about, when he shot 50.4% from the field, 42.6% from 3, and converted nearly 93% of his free throw shots. 35.6 is next up. Brogdon also brings with him some lockdown defense in the Eastern Conference Finals this year. He guarded Kawhi Leonard as well as anyone, holding him just 16 of 45 shooting in 135 possessions for a shooting percentage of just under 36%. And finally, 24.5. The Pacers also got a lot younger this offseason. Their average age of their top 8 players dropped from 27 in 18-19 to 24.5 for next season. I love what the Pacers are building, which is part of the reason they're 10th in the NBA 3 years from now, because that's what we do here, sports psychics sometimes, on Writer's Block. Thanks for hanging out. We're going back to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They're going to catch you up on everything trending in the world of sports before 30 minutes from now. Sportsline gets you set and ready for your gambling needs. Thanks for being here. I'm Bill Reiter, and I'll see you tomorrow.